Oh, it was slow to go live. It's only me and Ian at the moment. It's only us, and I thought I'd go live because hello, Johnny, um, and I think Max here as well. Yeah, oh, hello. Here comes someone else. Who's oh, there's a what? Add to the stream. There he is.
Hey,
Hello,
Troubles here.
Uncle. Oh, well, let's get me down here. Oh, and the lights will come back on, but I won't change anything because I bet they'll go off the second I fire the computer up. How are you doing, Brucey?
I'm good, mate. And you can't beat, I think you'll have to gamble on YouTube.
I'll have to gamble. What will I have
You're
to
not allowed to gamble on
YouTube?
YouTube, no.
Oh.
Only advertisers can advertise gambling services.
And did you? Well, we were just going to start. Ian and I were just ranting off air about Gateway, but you've gone into YouTube first. So I'll tell you what you can do on YouTube. You can manage to be facing prosecution in America for staging a skydiving stunt
Yes.
out of an aircraft, and you can have your YouTube videos still be up there.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? So, yeah, dangerous acts are against the community services. That was a dangerous act, but no, it's still there because YouTube's making money out of the ads.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
thank goodness that bloke was charged and all that. But how can that video still be there? I mean, yeah, I suppose Ala, they're Peppermint. I suppose they're making all the money, and
Yeah,
he's making none now.
It is down to even see Twitter now. Elon Musk saying, "Oh, I'm all for free speech and I'm not in this for the money." But when Turkey said you got to delete these Twitter posts, he deleted them. What about free speech? What about taking a stand for free speech? The world is full of money-driven services that are masquerading as free speech. Is that no one's providing free speech? It's all about the dollars. They should be honest about it. You know, you understand it's a commercial imperative, but don't lie and say YouTube is a platform where you can speak your mind and Twitter is a platform for free speech. It's all rubbish. It's all lies.
Absolutely. Now, Johnny says I've got to turn the microphone up. Sorry, I just had to shout at my phone a bit more. Well, I've done it before that I have rushed at this point to put the computer on and then it's all fallen apart. So I'm just
like that. It's good when that happens. You disappear then. That's fine. and having your voice very low, that's a good thing too.
I think the solution is here. Bruce should turn his mic volume down and then everyone can just turn the TVs up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've switched it on. I'm tempted to go the other way, and I just won't hit end. I don't know how we'll see what happens. Yeah, so that's a little aside that caught me, but I seem to recall, at that time in that video, didn't we all say strike this video? I think we had a little campaign to report it, and they obviously didn't listen to us at all.
No, it only listens if it's going to be adverse to YouTube's revenues, not if it's going to be positive to YouTube's revenues.
Yeah, I know. It's insane. And then Ian and I were talking about the next Gateway drone incident. And I think surely that headline really should have read that counter UAS system fails to detect 7 probably I'm going to say a minimum of, and they're most certainly more than 30 centimeters long, foil balloons launching from next to the airfield.
Yeah, I blame you. I blame you, Gary. You're a balloon driver.
Absolutely, it was. Yeah. It was probably my fault. You're exactly right. And funny again, I was talking to the other Ian today, and it's one of the first times where I could start saying subject matter expert, because I spent 25 of my working years letting toy balloons off and watching them go to see which way I would go in a balloon. And so you can see clearly that it launched very close. And if I were the Federati, I would have, or I was the airport guys, I would have sent people to every hotel on the southwestern edge of the airport, go and look for a party. And if anybody has a letter K in their name, arrest them. That's what I'd have done. That's what I would have definitely done.
Those extinction activists now, they've got a new tool in their handbasket, haven't they? Go and release a whole lot of party balloons at the end of the runway.
It's funny you should mention that. I was thinking that if these counter-UAS systems cannot detect that, because I guarantee the aircraft weather radar will have detected those foil balloons, but they wouldn't have had them on because it was a nice day. So the weather radars wouldn't have been on the aircraft, and landing in near the ground and all that. You don't want to fry people on the ground. It's frowned upon.
But with the counter UAS systems are pretty passive, though, aren't they? Don't they just check for RF and thermal signatures?
Yeah, no cooking the public here. No, apparently it's not the thing to do. I don't know why. It's not the thing to do. Well, they're passive, but they're supposed to have a radar on them.
Well, then it's not passive, is it? If it's got a radar.
No. So those flat panel radars, because it has several flat panels rather than a spinning head, and I would have thought, because drones, surely they're only there to detect the metal of the drones, and yeah, there is, but no, it's a perfect. You have to remember. Oh, I am in ranty mood, aren't I? It's just like the first UAS vehicle were balloons that dropped ordnance over Vienna in 17 whatever it was. So yeah, if you can defeat it with foil balloons, jobs are good. I mean, just think of the money we're going to save.
Yeah. Low-tech solutions to high-tech problems.
Yeah.
But you got to worry because they spend these millions of dollars on counter UAS systems and they don't trust them. What's the point?
I think that's a pretty telling phrase, actually, Bruce. I think you're right. I think it pains me to say it, but I think you're right.
I think the problem is it seems to be just this general process. I don't know how true it is, but Gatwick make out that also some air traffic controllers are made out on behalf of like NATS, the CAA make these rules, and then the airports have to follow them. But I don't know how true that is. But they're doing the same as Dublin Airport, where they're doing the anyone sees out, close for 30 minutes. Anyone sees out in the 30 minutes, close another 30 minutes, which is just such a backwards way of doing things. But yeah, I was going to say, it's funny that there was a conversation not so long since between myself, Darren Mills, and probably a couple of other people in the drone scene who were having a debate. Because I said, all you need to do is just get a helium balloon, bang some LEDs on it, put it up near an airport, and that's it, close down. And I think Darrell had said, well, you don't even need LEDs. I bet you can just put balloons up. So it's been proven right. And it's desperately sad that is the case, that even in daylight, you can put something up that isn't a drone and, hey, voila, it'll be reported as such.
What if you tied a balloon to a pigeon? That'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you'd have a faster moving balloon.
A pigeon-shaped balloon. A pigeon-shaped balloon. Have we lost the host again?
Oh, yeah, he's gone. Right, now, let's get on with the party, eh? Oh, he's back.
Shall I let him in? That it was being filmed, wasn't it? That there happened to be someone there. And if we look at that whole situation the first time, you had all this noise, all this press, all of this stuff, and yet there was nothing. Yes, this time we've got some high-res, good footage of going, someone's let off some balloons over there. Oh, that's not good. and then suddenly, there's a drone. Really? It was her birthday. We can see how old she was. Do you know what I mean? It's,
did you see it? Did you see a date? I thought I saw a heart. Anyway, there was seven of them.
Yeah. Look, this is no question that there's some middle to high class people gone for a nice afternoon spa day somewhere, and the girls brought some balloons, and as they've gone back to the car, they're all a little bit tipsy, and someone's let go next to the airport, and that's what's happened.
And what about the balloons? Anyway, it seems that way. But then also, as somebody that might be in that passenger airline, and not that balloons would have been a big threat. If the timelines are correct, then why did they react an hour after those plane spotters saw those balloons? I
think that they want to call it in. They'd just assume that the airport would realise they were balloons and act in whatever way you do for balloons, which might still be the airport sending someone out to make sure, you know, where they go or to try and take them down. I don't know, but I imagine they wouldn't have closed down for quite as long in the case of them realizing it was balloons. So I really don't know. That's a question for them. But I guess the trouble is, though, at first a pilot's seen it, so you just close down immediately because a pilot says they've seen one. And then when it's got closer, and then, this was good work by you, Gary. Obviously, you'd looked at where the balloons were, and you'd looked at the wind speed and wind direction, and it was blowing the balloons towards Gatwick Airport.
Yeah.
So that explains how over time that had got closer, and somebody at the airport seen that and then said, "Oh yeah, the pilot's right. There are drones." They then closed down. Apparently, an MPAS went out, so I don't know if they actually went. I don't know if they actually waited. I don't know if they actually waited until the MPAS went there and actually looked at them close up and said, "Oh yeah, it's definitely balloons." Who knows? But maybe that's
they would have outclimbed, unless NPAS was in the area. They would have, again, subject matter expert. They would have outclimbed NPAS within 10 minutes. So NPAS would have had to been right there. Oh, I suppose they could have stood off and tilted up their big camera, I suppose. But they definitely took off to the southwest of the runway somewhere. In fact, I can, now I'm on this, we can look at maps and we can look at that together.
Yeah, sure. It'd be nice
go on, mate, sorry.
I was going to say this is quite important because there's a few stories bundled up in this, which is why it's worth us covering it, because not only have we got a farce at Gatwick again, we've then got a media farce around that. And for people that don't know, there were two stories that came out. Obviously, there was people in the, you know, that follow the airline accounts, you know, people that do the spotting and people that do the reporting on, you know, they listen to the scanners and say, this is going on with this flight, this is going on with that, and so on. So they were quite aware that, wait a minute, there's balloons about, but that hadn't really got out into like much of the drone accounts. A few people spotted it, but it hadn't really started making rumblings on the groups. But there was a couple of accounts that cover the local area. So there's kind of like these local, you know, you have these local Facebook pages where people chat about things. So there was an anonymous post where someone had said his son had been flying, I think it's called Goffs Park or something like that. That's to the west of Crawley, and that the drone had malfunctioned and headed off towards Crawley Centre. Now, the interesting thing with this is from the park to Crawley Town Centre, that's going east. So it's not going towards the airport. Well, that didn't stop the day after. The Sun trying to do an exclusive and the Daily Mail both trying to use this post and saying, oh, it must have been that one that closed the airport down. So they've not got any confirmation off Gatwick that that's the case. They've just put that story out there saying, oh, well, it flew away. But they didn't say, oh, actually, it was flying in a different direction to where the airport was, which is what the post is essentially stating. So it's more than a little bit naughty. So it was good.
That's it there. That's your Goss part one.
Yeah. So you'd be going over east.
Breeze. There's Gatwick up there. It was a southwest breeze, but that's a long way. I've put up. I can't see the measuring tool here.
It's miles, isn't it?
It's miles. Yeah, it is. It's miles.
I suspect the balloon circled round though, didn't they? Because again, wind is never directional. I suspect they were churning round and they probably gained a bit of altitude, and that's where the hour kicked in and where someone had seen them in the sky. I'm guessing it was fairly high up that the reports were not at ground.
I think they had AI in them, so they were circling round to to continue with their nefarious letter.
Balloon GPT.
Balloon GPT. So the chaps that were doing the spotting were here. That video was being taken on this road here. That's where they were. And when he swung around, you could when he was pointing down the runway, you could see all those buildings. I just confirmed that by seeing those. And when he swings round to the right, he's looking down here. He's looking down in this area. So I would have sent somebody down to Manor House Hotel there, as a temple here. There's another hotel there. I'd have sent people down there to look for a party, and the balloons were flying like that. They were flying out that way, and as they climbed, they would have turned right. In the northern hemisphere, you turn right with altitude. In the southern hemisphere, the wind turns to left. So they would have turned right and ended up flying down the approach, as it was on that day. But they were climbing at a lick, and there's,
Somewhere in the halls of power, there's a bureaucrat saying, we need to regulate helium. We need to introduce licensing for helium because that will eliminate this problem.
The trouble is they're not broke though. Because can you do us a favour, Gary? Can you just in the private chat? I've put the link. Put what Brendan had said, and that's worth just pointing in the chat for people to read.
I think you might have to do it again because I've put it on this and it's not arrived on this. So if you can
let me just paste it in. If you can just, because I don't know how to do to actually put that into chat.
So here's you. It's funny you should say they should make it. They should make rules for it. Hang on, because again, subject matter expert. For what it's worth. So stop that one and go to this one first. I used to have to know this document inside out. So there are. There's your toy balloon releases. So that's what they would have had to done. They would have had to found guidance in Cap 736 operation of directed light, fireworks, toy balloons, and sky lanterns within UK airspace. 2016 amended. So yeah, they could have done that release, but they would have.
So are children allowed to have these balloons on strings without an operator ID, a flyer ID, and some way of making sure it doesn't get released accidentally? I mean, this sounds like a major hazard to aviation. Closes an airport for nearly an hour, and people aren't concerned.
Cut downs now. That's that's all in there. Yeah, you've got to have cut downs, and far be it from me to ever be involved in any form of advertising balloon that flew away and did that sort of thing. I would never have been involved in such
remote
a thing.
ID would fix this. All toy balloons must have remote ID. That'll solve the problem.
Yeah, it's the rules and legacy media only print stuff that provides the most sensational. Chinese spy balloons. Yes, they were. The trouble is, Daryl, you could perhaps write a piece about that, and it would get picked up and turned into truth. It just, that's the nonsense of it. But really, and I've worked at the tower where we've seen not those big shiny helium ones go by, but we've seen strings of normal helium party balloons go by, and we've seen it in the tower. We've seen it. It's not, they weren't invisible. We didn't have any counter UAS systems 30 years ago. Lost length of string. He wins that. Hello there, drone pilot. Yes, you win the chat at the minute, John. It's a nonsense story. They probably had to shut the. Go on, Ian.
Daryl makes a good point as well. I mean, when I read that post about the one with his son, we don't even know if that is someone having a jest or not, because I've seen a similar post like that before when there was an airport thing. So I don't really know if that is someone genuine or someone having a giggle. But obviously, we've given it the benefit of the doubt of it being genuine and looked at the distances and that, and it just doesn't really add up, because what he did say was it's an inexpensive drone. It's clearly not got geofencing, so it suggests it's some proper toy level thing. So the idea it was flying miles and then wasn't hitting anything on the way anyway, it just seems extremely remote, and the pilot's not seeing it anyway. The radio comms that someone had mentioned from pilots to the ATC, they actually did 2 passes by the sounds before they actually said, "Oh yeah, we're sure it's balloons." So it looks like the pilot said, "Yeah, we can see some, but we'll just double check while we're up here and having to hold until we can land." And then have said, "Yeah, actually, we're seeing balloons." So that's the annoying thing. So Gatwick Airport are aware that pilots are also seeing balloons, and they've not mentioned that. So they're just sitting on the narrative that stops getting them grief off airlines. because airlines won't give them grief if they say, "Oh, it's a drone, it's for safety." But if they say, "Oh, well, we're closed down because of balloons," so questions then will be asked.
And well, they weren't to know. To be fair, they weren't to know that there weren't to be another.
Oh no, but once
seven.
you do know, there's then nothing to stop you putting out a correction and explaining what had gone on, and say, "Well, we have to go through this process."
They were to know. They had counter
Operationally,
UAS systems. That's what they're for. Counter UAS to tell you it's a drone.
But no, I agree with that. But there's debate over that. So yeah, the argument is, what is the point? I mean, Gatwick Airport essentially has, to our knowledge, the best counter UAS setup of any airport, not just in the UK, not just in Europe, but probably in the world. So if you're saying we've got the most expensive, fancy counter UAS system, and basically it was Ords, which was the Army, Skyperion, which is the RAF. So they've taken bits from both of our military counter UAS systems, integrated that. If you actually look at the at Brighton Snapper Twitter account, he's got all the photos of all the sensors on there, so you can see yourself. They haven't spent cheap. They put both systems in. They put plenty of sensors. It looks like they've got more than just like a default or basic minimum you can get away with sensors. It looked like they even had more than one head unit, which is the thermal and the video. So you spent all that money. And then it's like, well, what is the point? Because what you're doing is you spent all this money and you're making your system redundant because you're still making the manual process take precedence over it. So every time you're like, well, we're ignoring that. We'll listen to what the report is we've had over at radio to ATC. And so you air traffic controllers will argue, well, what can we do? We've been told we've got to take it seriously. But we'll say, well, then we might as well just unplug the system and put it in the bin. See if you can get a refund. Failing that, just put one of those ads up on Facebook saying, "Can anyone weigh this in for us as metal scrap?" Yeah.
Oh, we should do that, shouldn't we? We should do that. Well, it's shown. Well, it is exactly. Brendan said the news story here should be about why the airport shut down operations at all after the fiasco of 2018. What type of sighting? And as we have said multiple times, looks for his old cell phone. All you need to close an airport is a smartphone or a phone. You just need a telephone. That's all you need to close an airport. And who is accountable for this needless disruption? Exactly. Brendan had it right there. But it's shown. This is shown to me how incapable counter UAS systems are, how easy it is to defeat them, and it's revealed the hand of another way of attacking an airport. Terrible to say, but I think it has.
And the thing that's a shame is it's not a fault of the technology or a lack of spending. It's because you've got a process that isn't giving the credit to the technology that you've got.
To be fair, though, they haven't tested airliners against party balloons.
No.
We don't know the risks.
Well, I should imagine that a big bit of foil like that going through them, I wouldn't do a lot, would it, actually?
If it covered up the SBPTO, it might be a nuisance.
Yeah.
But what are the odds? What are the odds? There could be shopping bags. I mean, shopping bags at what was it? Heathrow, yes. Wasn't it? Same level of risk. Yeah.
But it speaks more to how poor. But again, the leap from the counter UAS, it shows that there's not really an appetite to buy these systems out there, because as soon as something happens, the counter UAS providers, look, if you'd only had our stuff, it would have been.
If it had D-drone, that'd have been good. D-drone, that's what they should have had.
All the way.
Yeah, D-drone.
It just, they're plainly not being bought in numbers, or people are buying one and finding out, these don't really do what they think they say they're going to do, and we won't have any more.
Well, I was replying to some of those, because what you had the people with it's all the drone gun malarkey lot, and it's saying, if you only change legislation and you could just use that drone jammers, but I'm not saying no, because your drone jammer is going to do diddly squat against a balloon. We'd just be spending hundreds of thousands.
Buckshot's what you need.
Yeah. And it'd be no different. Daryl was saying, yeah, I assume it's been run tests with a multitude of real drones. Yeah, they do run it with real drones. In fact, the sky peering element of it is part of the AUKUS system, which is the RAFs. It's essentially the go-to counter UAS for the UK. It's deployable by helicopter, and so they run regular tests with the sensors on that. As much as anything, I think there'll be iterative improvements to the software and to sensors as they get new drones, and they've defined probably ways, around it where particular, because that's the reason why I have lots of sensors. Because one sensor might be foolable, or you might get a false alarm out of it. Where you use multiple sensors, then your chances of actually getting past it become pretty slim. Then, I mean, ultimately, when you've got video at the end of it and thermal, you're not getting past that because you're looking with your eyes. But you just need the information first to know which direction something's coming in. At Brendan's post, which you put up, again, that just makes a note about the press, because this is the press side of it, which was concerning. So we've had the Sun doing the story, the Daily Mail did it, but the Daily Mail even took photos from 2018 and tried to pass them off as photos from Sunday. So that's just showing you just how poor the reporting is we're getting around.
That's a shock from the Daily Mail. Goodness me, I know the oracle of ethical reporting. But it shows you, if you were actually wanting to be a bad actor and attack an airport, what would you do? You'd build an ornithopter, wouldn't you? I mean, the problem is so easily circumvented. All this millions of dollars being spent, and you can circumvent it with a party balloon or an ornithopter you can buy off Banggood for $111 or something. I don't know.
Well, they're only as good as the sensor operator sat looking at the screen, aren't they? And then the information that sensor operator is getting to turn the cameras, and because it would be useful at an airport to have a system that detected flocks of birds lifting from fields at either end of the runway as an aircraft's approaching. Could be a big flock of birds, and it could be trouble, and it would be good to, because we know for sure that birds take down airliners. So
well, they must have that, because they use similar radars. The weather radar should do that when they have microbursts. That thing.
The weather radar does do that, but in a lot of places, the weather radar now is miles away and is part of a mesh network of weather radars. So it's not on the airfield anymore. In a lot of places, they probably still is there.
And they'll run on 5.8 gigahertz.
Exactly. Yes. So watch out for your FPV. If the and down here in Durban, they actually have a weather radar expressly for that purpose, for the barn swallows that roost down there in their millions. But again, you've got to have somebody watching that screen and saying, "Oh, look, the birds are lifting."
AI. That's all I need. AI will solve that.
I know. I was going to go there as well, and that's what they're going to do. And then, heaven forbid. But it's like an onion. It's a much more layered problem than just suggesting you buy system X, Y, Z and everything will be perfect. It's not how it works. And stop telling us these things. Now you're sending me something from Stuart Ritchie.
There's a good thing here to show, which we didn't have last time around, but you've got people that are journalists, and they're immediately speaking out and saying, I don't buy this. I don't believe there's a drone. Gatwick doesn't have a good record.
No, absolutely. It's going to be with us for eternity. This, isn't it? And it's not as exciting a thing as watching Eurovision. So I couldn't think of a clever way to segue into that. I couldn't think of how to do that. But it's another year. I'm just thinking it's another year. I've heard that the police stopped a lot of commercial operations flying, or the police drone unit stopped them flying around some official functions there that were requested to do it for the TV types. Cheers, Daryl. And operators aren't very happy about it. That's what I've heard. I don't know. Anyone else know?
Yeah, I mean, there was a tweet about that as well, which I retweeted, where Merseyside police were being asked. So yeah, it looks like that on the night, commercial operators have been stopped from doing their job, so earning money and putting food on the table. But the prestige from that as well of saying, you know, I was shooting footage at Eurovision for future business, so they're being deprived of that as well. So it was a really concerning set of events, and then to rub it in, and this really, to me, is tone deaf, and it's pretty insulting to the commercial drone industry. The police have then been flying drones around, taking video, and have put together their own little edited video. So it's like, you know, very least, if you're going to stop drones flying, then don't be rubbing it in the faces of operators whose work you've taken.
Is that the video you've added? Let me add this.
Yeah,
You added a video here. That's this one, is it? That was a horse, that was great. It was a nice day for it. That's good. I think we've seen enough of that.
I was enjoying that.
Yeah,
Were you enjoying that?
so there you go. So you know that should have been a commercial operator being able to get shots like that. And it was noticeable on the show itself, although they had drone shots and they weren't just obviously UK, they were across Europe for the particular acts. There were ones obviously done, prepared in advance and put together. So it was nice that there was some drone usage on there, but there wasn't live shots on the night, you know, showing the crowd or showing outside and saying, hey, look, this is Liverpool. So you've deprived Liverpool of, you know.
Is the British police force overfunded or something? Where do they get the money to make this?
Well.
Seriously?
To be honest, I don't begrudge the police doing social media stuff and getting a bit of exposure out there. But in this particular circumstance, I think it is pretty tone-deaf decision when, you know, we know commercial operators.
Maybe that's what that's where the drone registration fee is going, perhaps, to fund these educational, informative videos, because it's going nowhere else, is it?
Well, what concerns me is where's all this information? You know, where's the communication? Someone explaining what had gone on and why this was necessary. And is this going to happen to every international event? I mean, I think it's embarrassing on the world stage. You know, we'll have the America. You'll have.
If they do it in Canada, imagine how many helicopters and aircraft will be knocked out of the sky.
Yeah. Well, think you've got the Super Bowl, you'll have like the World Series, and I bet you there'll be drones flying there, and there won't be the police saying no commercial operator, you can't be filming that. You know, we'll have events in Europe, whether it's football matches, you know, big sports contests, whatever big event, and there will be drones there. So why is it that the UK, you know, essentially you're saying the UK is that incompetent or is that paranoid about drones, single-handedly the UK, no other country, that we can't trust our own commercial operators? You know, given the flying DJI, it puts out the serial number. You just ask for the serial numbers. Are you saying you can't actually manage to look at the screen and say, especially when your own police drones are flying by, you go, well, that's happening. Oh yeah, that's so and so that's, you know, doing the work for, you know, the council, or is doing the work for this private company that's involved in it, it's a sponsor, and this one's for the TV. You could surely do that. I just
the best thing about that. The best thing about that is back in China, the Chinese Communist Party were watching this live because it's the Chinese DJI drone.
And isn't the Aintree Racecourse not a million miles away from there? Of course, that's another great big "come don't fly your drones here" play. That's in Liverpool, isn't it?
Yes, that is. I think. Well, I think they've had their own drones for video, so that there has been some commercial stuff that's just to prove by the race course for videos.
But
I
they're
mean,
not
obviously,
happy about flying.
no. I mean, they've obviously got the issue where they're concerned about people live streaming, and I don't particularly approve of those particular set of pilots and that use case. But yeah, obviously that's presenting questions.
Well, I don't think I approve of anything where betting that microsecond or two difference that it makes from the slight delay on TV is rigged, isn't it? Then on TV,
We need to get DJ Audits down there doing a live stream,
DJ
eh?
audits.
Yeah, do a live stream. That'd be good.
I mean, the issue is really you just want things consistently. So if people are being naughty,
Yeah.
regardless of what they're doing it, whether there's somebody that's losing some money from it, or whether it's someone that's not and is concerned about safety, that they're both treated equally. But and again, you want it so that commercial operators know that they can be involved in a large, prestigious UK event without the work being cancelled. Because for all we know, I mean, I know the rental prices in Liverpool were skyrocketed for this. So if an operator's actually had to travel there to do video on the night, paid a huge, cost to actually be present there, and then had it cancelled, imagine kicking nads that is.
Well, it speaks to needing a proper authorization chain before it happens, like 2 weeks out. Right, you're going to do this. It means you couldn't have ad hoc sort of filming, but you're going to do this, all right. Fulfill these requirements and away, fill your boots.
I mean, what Brendan said is in the US, if this was taking place, the FAA would have to be making calls like this, both for airport closures and these big decisions. And really, we need some big head honcho at the CAA that's got the backing fully of the DFT, and they have to make these calls, and they have to hear both sides. So they'd have to hear, this is our policing concern, or this is our national security concern. And then from the commercial operators, but saying, but hang on a minute, I'm over here, I'm doing this, I can do this safely. And them saying, all right, then you could do this and you could do that, or you could do it with this restriction, or no, you can't do it at all. But this idea that there just doesn't seem to be any transparency on this at all is really concerning.
I got to ask Ian, Mad, what are you burning? What is going to be releasing the smoke past you shortly?
Anything is possible.
No,
I'd have used the word probable, actually.
I'm playing with this, which is not. It is Hearlink, but it's not Hearlink. But what you can see on it, and what it actually is this, and this is something that has highly surprised me. Let me just bring it up into view. It's this little SIYI camera. This thing is phenomenal. And I am just astonished that more companies have not made cameras and gimbals that you can attach to a drone for the simplest setup. And I'm not saying it's perfect. It's got some really stupid design issues, like the gimbal catches the arm in certain angles. It needed to be about 20% bigger, and they'd have had something very interesting. But there's like 3 of these things that exist today in the marketplace off the top of my head. There's loads of Gremsy gimbals, there's loads of standalone cameras, but a camera and gimbal in one. I don't understand outside of DJI how this hasn't become a thing, basically.
Well, I suppose we're hitting a point where there's enough users that would make it useful. So just explain to me and to everyone else how that connects to the Hearlink. What's the video link? And
unplug it. So, let me just unplug the connection so I can bring it up properly. Now, this thing is unique in the sense of it has HDMI output, it has analog video output, and it has Ethernet video output. You have all 3 options. So you can do HDMI if you want. You can do analog, CVBS, or AV, but it will also do Ethernet. So the new Hearlink 1.1 has an Ethernet port, and that's what I was just testing, and it works absolutely fine. And the nice thing with Ethernet is they have their own app, but it ties into Q Ground Control, and you can move the camera around with your finger on the screen. You can control it. You literally have everything that we've always had on DJI, and it's almost like, how is this taking so long?
And is that the 1080p one, or have they come out with something higher res?
It records at 4K, but 1080p live.
Oh, today I don't mind if it records at 4K.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a funny feeling they were doing something that was just 1080p. So I wonder if this is the second one, or if something's changed along the way.
Yeah, no, it'll record 4K, and it has 1080p live stream.
Do you know what the bitrate is on the 4K?
It doesn't show, but I'll be honest, it looks decent. It genuinely does. It surprised me. Even in, this, believe it or not, this room's actually really hard for cameras because there's lots of different light colors and sources because it is somewhat of a studio. You've got a bright light there, lights there. And I'm used to seeing how cameras look in here. And even the good DJI ones struggle a little bit because I end up having to have a custom color profile on all the studio cameras just to get it right. You know what I mean? Just to get the white balance where I want it. But it looks good. It genuinely... It looks good. I think the complaints I've seen, because there's a really long thread on it on the Ardra Pilot group, and they're pushing firmware out every couple of weeks. The gimbal is silly. It will catch. It's not going to be the most stabilized. So if you're going to be wanting to go at high bang angles, you could come up against problems. But I think for something like a 450 platform that you want to build and have a camera on, it's got digital zoom up to 6 times. It's for 300 quid. It
looks quite compact. So I mean, it looks like that felt like that looks like it on a 3DR Solo actually.
Yeah, it's tiny. Just to give you a size comparison.
10 years later or whatever it is.
If you want a size comparison, there's GoPro.
But that's what I mean, that's what they should have been making in the first place.
Yeah.
This is what I've been badgering Philip about for years.
Yes,
as I do gimbal, is just do the complete thing, and hopefully from this there'll be future generations. This is where the open source community needs to be.
Yeah, and they really need to probably do one about say 30% larger, a bigger gimbal, more angle. Like if I show you the angle, it's not got a huge roll. That's the roll limit, so it's not massive. And there is a point where the camera will catch the gimbal like there. So if you're looking like down like that and you were rolling, it's gonna.
Haven't you got an angle grinder?
It's a catch. But if they made the gimbal arm probably 5 mil longer, problem solved. But I think there'd be a real market for this. Probably, if you think of the Unique H. If you ever saw one of them, I had one. How big that gimbal was, that size, I think people would be more than happy with. More than happy with.
A quick question: can you mount that upside down to use on a rover?
Yes, you can.
I was
They
going
added
to
it
ask
in
that.
firmware.
I was going to ask that.
It is
Exactly the
fully
same.
upside down compatible. Yes, they added
So that
it.
means we can use it in the Southern Hemisphere.
Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah,
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 that's
yeah,
it. That's
yeah,
the
yeah.
way.
Yeah.
I think they've genuinely got a bit of a little diamond here compared to what anyone else has got, because it isn't perfect, but there is nothing else. If you take the price of a Gremsy gimbal, I think their cheapest is $500-600. Do they? I don't think they do one below that. So if you're going to mount something like a Sony 6400, is a very common camera, you're going to be talking $2,000 to put a camera on a gimbal at minimum. At minimum,
That's very cool. I was going to ask that for rovers as well.
Yeah, it does upside down. Yeah. I think as an FPV camera, I think it's very good. I think to get you by to be able to inspection, I think it will be all right. I think it'll. I'm going to mount it on one of the 450 frames. Actually, it might go on the 650. Thinking about it,
and
because that's ready to fly.
Does it have any tracking smarts or anything like that in its software?
So it has 3. No, it's got 3 gimbal modes. So FPV normal, you know what I mean? It basically is the old gimbal firmware, the old open source gimbal firmware. That's in essence what they've done here and built a product with it, with a Sony Starvis sensor as well. I haven't tried it outside. It's Starvis too.
Is it Star?
Yeah.
Oh, now I want one.
But you think about it, £300 for a stabilized camera and gimbal. $300. That's cheap.
And so as you say, you're just plugging that into your existing FPV transmission system, whatever that might be. So you can plug that HDMI into the DJI
Link,
stuff.
if you want to, or Ethernet. It's a lot tidier over Ethernet. I was just trying the Ethernet now. If you do it over HDMI, you've still got S-Bus input to control the camera, so you can control pitch, your and roll, and start and stop recording. But what you don't get over S-Bus is feedback, so you don't know you're recording. And that's something it doesn't, I can't quite see if it's overlaying. It doesn't look like it overlays, but when you use it over Ethernet and you use QCount Control, and they've got their own app, which you can go into as well, you get full on-screen view of what's going on. And
So
with their app,
I'm a bit dumb. What do I need with Ethernet to just a very, very long cable then?
it just has to be the new Hearlink 1.1 ear unit, because they only
Right.
added Ethernet onto the 1.1. So the original Hearlink ear unit doesn't have, let me just unplug this cable. The
So all I need
original
is a
Hearlink
Hearlink
doesn't have
and-
that port. That port there, Philip added on the 1.1 version which is Ethernet. So that was added to the 1.1. You don't need to change the ground station. You would just need the 1.1 ear unit, because that added Ethernet. And you can do Ethernet on the original one, but you have to use a USB to Ethernet adapter, which is a little bit clunky, and then you're relying on USB in vibration situations. And it's you've always been able to use Ethernet on Hearlink. You just had to use adapters.
Wow, that seems like a very, very tidy solution. And what's well, you must stick that on top of your rover and then take it off for a drive and see how far you can get with that.
I've had it for a little while, and they're shouting at me. They've emailed me and said, how's the review going? And I've had a very busy month, and I haven't been able to get on top of things. But it's one of those products you can't just unbox and go. It's not like a lot of the stuff you can just go, here's a new radio, here's a quad ready to fly. I've spent 2 or 3 nights on it now, just getting my head around how it works. And it's not complicated. You just need to really have a basic understanding of it. What did they ask? Why would you use HDMI? Why would you use Ethernet? The nice thing with Ethernet is it's a more integrated control. So if you use Ethernet, you can use the on-screen to move the camera with your finger, and you have all of the feedback. So you have the recording status, the controls of the camera settings. You don't have that when you're using HDMI.
And how? What rotate? If you mount it vertically, what rotations it got?
It's not 360, but it's almost. So if I point it forward there, right? If I go around, it goes to like almost fully back and almost fully back. You can't.
Right.
Unfortunately,
it won't go all the way around.
No, and I think what I would probably do is I'd end up mounted it side on. Would probably be maybe actually on an angle, which gives you'd want ideally to be able to look behind. But then again, if you're in a copter, you just spin it round anyway.
Sure. No, I think there's a huge market in rovers coming up now. Multi-rotors and all that, great boats and rovers, I think are kind of where it's at now. If I had money to invest, that's why I'd be putting it. And garlic bread.
For rovers, I think it's a super interesting option. And they did send it to me for free. In fact, I asked them to send it to me. I'd seen it, and I said to them, "Hey, any chance you could send me one of these? It looks very, very interesting." And it's been sitting in a box for about 3 weeks, so I'm just trying to get on top of it now. You know what it's like, Bruce. They want everything now. Unfortunately, it's
a Chinese company though.
It is SIYI who make that competitor to Hearlink, the H30, H20.
Oh,
yes.
I've got some of that awful early stuff. Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay.
But they do make a wireless video link that Thing was using.
Yes.
Nikolai was using. Nikolai was using their wireless video link, and he had very, very good things to say about it. So they do seem to be onto something with some of their stuff.
That it sort of leads me on. The reason I mentioned China there is just that I heard more about that green UAS system from the AUVSI, and that is $100,000 per, let's say, autopilot. You have 5 autopilots. There's $500,000 you'll need to get it rubber stamped by the AUVSI. So that I see as being a complete fail. I need to write something about that to go with something else.
Yeah.
A complete fail before it begins.
There's a
I don't
real
know which.
Sorry.
Go on, mate.
And I was going to say, there's a real interesting movement we're going to see at the moment. I've been listening to some stuff on a lot of on electric vehicles and EVs. And whilst it's not directly our industry, we're about to see the march of the Chinese manufacturers into Europe. Big style. And what's interesting about it is they're coming at it, and it from a very different angle. And the reason it's sort of relevant is, I think where America and the UK and other companies have struggled is, it reminds me of the aviation industry trying to come to drones, and it's like the car industry trying to move electric. What's happened in China is the complete opposite. It's all gone into the battery manufacturers. So the biggest being BYD, who are a company who were making batteries. They used to make battery banks for phones and all of this stuff. They're now basically China's largest EV manufacturer, and they're coming over to Europe. And the real interesting thing is how fast they've progressed. And it's interesting when we compare that to the UAV industry, where we've seen, like, you have Boeing and all of these companies. Oh, we're working on these big UAV projects. Yeah, it's all faded to nothing, and it's ended up being the electronic manufacturers like DJI, which is because, look, if we take what DJI predominantly was, they were an electronics company. If you go back far enough, they were making flight controllers. It's electronics.
Yeah.
It's boards and software, not aviation. And the Chinese coming into the country is going to be super, super interesting. And they estimate that they're going to be about 10,000 euros, potentially up to 10,000 dollars cheaper than the Western equivalents. Which is
they've had to smack down the price of Teslas in China, haven't they, to make them competitive. Because they're just not competitive, and a lot of the Chinese ones are nicer. There's the one made by the guy from Audi with BYD. Is it the Seagull?
Yeah, I want my new MG Roadster.
Yeah, and it's like, as someone said there, apparently BYD is struggling with the sport, and they will. And look, that the Chinese general model is not walk in and create a brilliant support network. They will walk in, flood the market with product, and mop up the support afterwards. But they can do support very well. And whilst it isn't in the culture, predominantly in America, support is limited. In Europe, it's big. If we look at the consumer laws in Europe, we're light years ahead of the US and others. But if you look at DJI as a large Chinese manufacturer, they have predominantly Western levels of support. And that is rare in Chinese companies. They tend to be, we build, we sell. That's your problem once you've bought it. So they can do it, but it takes time. And DJI support was horrific in the early days. But today, to be fair to them, they are probably up there with any company over here. And I've got a video coming on DJI, actually. I've got a video coming on it because there's been a bit of hoo-ha about them supporting air units being supplied in ready-to-fly drones, and they don't. They're not warranting them. And that's not particularly unusual for them. It's not a new stance. It's that they don't offer a global warranty, and they never have. And it's an interesting subject, but I've sort of cut it from the live stream, and that's going to be going out as well. But they don't offer a warranty outside of the original country of origin.
A quick question here again. Is that model number A8 from that one?
Yes.
Well, that's funny this, because I typed into Google Gremsy gimbal, and the first thing that comes up is the
A8 Mini. It is
A8 Mini comes up on eBay, 245 quid. So they've done a good job to get that. Say if you Google Gremsy, that pops up first.
They bought some links somewhere. But the electric car thing is rather interesting, and it's going to be, I think, and what that's going to do though is help push battery technology along. And there's some, look, I don't know if you guys have seen the leaked images today of this new DJI thing. There's apparently 2 new products coming of DJI in the next 2 weeks. We probably think it's an M350 to replace the M300 and an M35 to replace the M30. Now, the images that have leaked today show a very unusual battery arrangement. They almost look like cylinders. And there's rumors that they're 72 volts in total.
Like little rockets.
They almost, it genuinely looks like gas tanks. Let me find a picture.
Hydrogen drone.
I did say that, Bruce. Is it hydrogen? But if we look at, let me find you a link to the images. It is rather interesting.
Hydrogen is a.
I don't think it'll be hydrogen, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's custom cells. But there's talk of it being 72 volts. So what's that? That's what S is 72, Bruce?
12. No, but
that's
72.
no.
Oh, yeah.
No.
No, it's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
That's a lot of power.
Well, maybe they're using a different chemistry. Who knows?
It could be something. Are they actually creating their own cells now? You know, look, let's be realistic. DJI have always.
That's where they put the Uyghurs, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that Uyghurs? Yeah, they put it themselves.
But, you know, predominantly the DJI drones have either mostly pocket cells, like traditional lipos, but then they moved on to some round cells in some of the very, very small stuff. But could they even now be rolling their own batteries now? And that's the next evolution for them, isn't it? Yeah.
When you transport batteries, is it watt hours or amp hours that they?
Watt hours.
It's watt hours. Yeah, I was going to say
hours,
they're not trying to get around the amp hour capacity limitation by using very high voltages with low capacities.
Yeah,
or low
and we've not
current.
seen the voltages, but let me find this looks very unusual. I'll be honest. This doesn't look like anything we're used to seeing.
Do Champion make anti-spark plugs?
A lot of the young people aren't going to have a clue what you're talking about there now. Not going to have a clue. Oh, we're waiting with bated breath to see this image appear now.
Yeah, I'm going to find them.
What else has happened this week? I forgot we were going to talk about something else. I completely forgot what it
Raspberry Pis are coming back into stock. I wrote a thing this morning.
Are
The 02W is supposed to be in stock next week locally here. And I watched a video from the Raspberry Pi Foundation that they're starting with the smaller boards and then going up to the big ones. And Raspberry Pi 4s should be in plentiful supply by early next year. So that's good news.
It is good news. And the release of the files for your we're all wanting to try the ADS-B.
Yes, I know. See, different colors. Everything's available. It will be shortly. As I say, just tidying up the documentation. With the Zero becoming available, I've got an extra imperative to get that code optimized so to run on the Zero, because at the moment you can't buy a Raspberry Pi 4 for love nor money. So if I can do it on the Zero W2, then everyone can just start putting them together.
How can I send you these images? I haven't got them on a web link. I'm just trying to think.
Just share the down the bottom. There should be.
Put it on your phone and hold it up to your camera.
Share a slide. So if you do present.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can put them up from my disk. Yeah, I've got them. If you want to present my screen, Gary, I can show. Well, there, 2 seconds. Let me open the.
Just go present, and it pops up at the bottom for me to present.
Let me open the browser.
Oh, Bruce also has the authority.
So
I wouldn't dare abuse it, though.
No, I realise that.
You might be able to add it directly yourself here with the present, because I was able to.
Yeah, share screen. Here we go. What have I got here? Chrome. Which one is it? Oh, window.
Frozen your end, Pepper. Oh, that. Oh, there we are.
Right.
Now I'm going to add the stream. There we are.
So, can you see that?
Oh, yes.
So this is a new aircraft, which looks like many of DJI's aircraft, Cyclops, the octopus thing. However, this is the real interesting thing. Look at the batteries at the back.
I knew a girl like that.
I know. But
that's the overbooster.
Unusual, to say the least, isn't it? That is.
What do you think those orange things at the top are? Clips to hold it on?
They're latches to hold it on, I think. So the question is this, part of me thought, could this be air powered?
You want to get rid of that party, and that part's useless.
Yeah. But they look like tanks, don't they? They really do.
They
Well, maybe
do.
they're armor plated for use in Ukraine. Who knows?
Perhaps it ejects them as you're overhead.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
But
Well, not a fuel cell. There we are. Too compact.
it is
I mean,
very.
I mean, convention only says that the battery packs have got to be kind of square. It's only convention that
Yes.
says that, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, because we use square pocket cells, and because off-the-shelf cells are traditionally either round or a pocket
Yeah.
square.
But if you're very high voltage, you'd have to have multiple cells, and putting them in a cylindrical form factor is not particularly space efficient, is it?
No,
What shape would you make the cells so they fit in with no wasted space?
You'd have to have made the cell that shape, wouldn't you? It would have to be.
It's going to be multiple
rolled.
cells, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to tessellate them without gaps, you can't do it into a cylinder.
And
No.
well, that's definitely not going to be something you can carry on an aeroplane. If that's, do you see this is like an M30 size thing?
We think it's M30 size. M35 is the best guess for this, whatever this is.
I mean, there's not a lot they can, you know, it's making weird shapes to differentiate the look of the thing in the market, perhaps.
Yeah.
Maybe it's no more than that. See the shaping on the
That
front.
said,
I
they
mean,
don't really need to differentiate themselves because there is.
Yeah, I was going to say the
yeah,
same
true,
thing.
true. And also, if your hand, well, I don't know, would you? Oh, hello, hello, hello. If you'd want to hand catch it, I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
going to
Anyway.
be what is going to be interesting for DJI, especially with their next batches of their industrial stuff or enterprise. I'm not sure where they're going to go because I'll be honest, their last releases have been outstanding. You speak to anyone who uses the M30, it is the bee's knees. It is a phenomenal piece of equipment. M300 users are genuinely happy, apart from the fact they made the batteries too big for air travel. That's why Louis and his type of people haven't used it for traveling. But as a piece of equipment, it works extremely well. I don't know where they're going to go with these now. You know, they've got the payloads, they've got the products. You know,
that's probably a spy camera transmitter thing. That big bulby bit.
Yeah,
that'll be going space. Need the extra power to get back to China.
It's the microwave radar that incinerates people as it goes.
It's a slaughter
the Kardashian edition.
Slaughter Grande.
Kardashian edition, yeah.
The main thing that's missing at the moment, because if you think about it, like your M30s is targeted at your sort of police, emergency services, search and rescue, that kind of thing. But what the never been that's been affordable, and it's always been third parties, is a tether. I mean, that's what you really need with the police. You can put the M30 up as essentially a temporary CCTV that you can have running, you know, what hours, or if you wanted days. I think that for me would be really interesting for DJI to know. I think, and then it becomes like interesting for like likes of councils to use as well. You know, when you're trying to do a deployment out for fly tipping, you know, that kind of thing, where a drone would be. I think it'd be, you know, it opens up more opportunities than trying to get a CCTV out there, because what they're tending to do is, you know, put up a wildlife camera, that kind of thing. But again, you're limited to the one view. At least
it is funny, isn't it? They've never done that market. And there's some big companies. Telstar, is it, or Tetherstar? One of those companies have made a lot of stuff. Ellistar, yeah, that's it. And but yeah, no, it is a market DJI have never really, you know, they did have that massive inspection drone. If you remember the Wind, if you remember she was huge thing, which was sort of a large scale surveillance aircraft. But yeah, I do believe the M30 is a phenomenal piece of kit. For the people who've used it, it is genuinely on another level. And obviously you got Autel now releasing stuff, but look, I think if you're spending $2 or $3 grand on something, Autel may be able to convince you into it. I think if you're spending 10 to 12, I'm not being funny, I'd put my money in DJI's pocket. At least you know it's secure. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. It and the sort of swinging it back around to that green UAS scheme where the manufacturers are going to have to put $100,000 into each autopilot they want certified by that scheme. So we're up in that big drone arena really, because the amount of markup, because they're talking end to end. So motors, speed controllers, the controller, everything has to be US manufactured. They're going to cost, those aircraft are going to end up costing at an M30 size an absolute fortune, 2, if not 3 times, I should imagine, what the DJI equivalent will cost. So who are they going to play to? So if you go down that route of saying, well, we can absolutely only use these, you're going to end up with 10 companies in America. There's just going to be no one there.
And I still don't think there's no one who makes a product that comes close. You can build some nice stuff, but I'm not being funny. There is no US equivalent of the M30. There's no US equivalent of the Mavic 3. I'm not even convinced there's a US equivalent of the Mavic 2. Let's be honest. The Skydio is at best a Phantom 3 Pro, Mavic 3, Mavic Pro. It's a half.
Phantom
it's
4, I think.
Phantom 4. Yeah, Phantom 4. It's all the same camera, though, Gary. They never, at best, okay, it's got the intelligent stuff, but let's be honest, all of the reviews showed it was pretty sketchy in the real world. And how good is it? And if you look at DJI, their early object avoidance was really not good. But do you notice on that pictures of that camera how many side cameras were on it? What DJI have done is fixed they haven't gone with some crazy software. They haven't. Every year they've been plodding away, and what they've been doing is adding more sensors. So they've been combining cameras and TOF sensors to give depth. And now these drones have got 12, 14 camera sensors all the way around, and it's good enough. It will stop you flying it into the wall. Does it need to autonomously fly around that wall? Not really in most situations,
And it wouldn't take much to say, just stay X away from the wall, and there it is flying autonomously around.
And they will as well. They'll do that.
Yeah, it's not a
if you covered it last week or not, or if it's come out at the time being, but isn't there a rumor that Skydio is going to be military only?
I wouldn't be shocked.
I think that rumor's been there the whole time. I think that's more of a fact than a rumor, really. Because who
do we think selling more drones to consumers? Skydio or
Autel?
Let me think. Autel.
GoPro Karma. Don't forget the GoPro Karma.
The bigger question is Skydio selling enough consumer drones to make it worth it in that market? And the answer is probably no. The very fact that they haven't made any attempt to go outside the US limits the market as well.
Yeah, it never came to Europe. It never came to the UK.
No, because part of the hype around...
Yeah, there'd be ITAR, for sure.
ITAR.
Yeah. The hype around products and the adoption, part of that's from it having the global market and influencers globally saying, yeah, I love it, and seeing the use cases. If you try and do that all within one country, again, it's a lot trickier because you just got you just don't get the feeling that this is something I can go around the world with and do my stuff.
The American systems that are born into the blue and potentially the green systems as well can overseas militaries can ask to use them, and they can get around the ITAR thing. But you haven't got a hope in Hades of getting around that with a system that you're only costing for consumer use. So as soon as you've got that necklace around your neck, you've had it. It was real. I can't think of the metaphor I was going for then, but I was going for a South African metaphor that I shouldn't have gone for. It was...
Crikey, man. Keep yourself under control, man.
Exactly.
It is interesting, and if we look at who's in that, you got Teal, and let's be honest, all of them, they made that. I think they're in trouble, or at least Red Cat's in trouble, because I still have not seen anything Red Cat as a company
Of course it
has
is.
done that's been successful. They're looking to wind off Fat Shark and Rotor Riot, which are their public-facing arms, and that's being slid to the side, let's just say, into a new entity. I'm not sure how the shareholders will benefit from that, because it seems to be some very strange deal. And then that's going to leave Teal and their military industrial stuff. And if you remember, Gad, didn't they say at one point they'd had something like $500,000 of orders? And you're like going, that's chump change. In that world, that's not even, you know, covering all.
It doesn't keep the lights on.
It doesn't. No, it's in that world. It's just like,
oh, that's like that reminds me. What's that Bristol AAM company? They have burnt through money, haven't they? Because they've just pushed it out another year for their.
Yeah, but it is the future, Gary. It is the future.
Oh yeah,
and it always will be.
Yeah, always will be. Yes.
I'm thinking. Wait till we get the fusion powered ones, mate. That's when it'll all happen.
It's 20 years away. Less than 20 years. Less than 20 years. I see Red Cat. The last thing I read about them was they've sent 200 to Ukraine or something like that. That'll be under the military. Vertical are probably, they probably are the best, but I think they're gonna, what's it they say, run out of runway, which is appropriate. Isn't that what they say, the venture capitalist people or something? I don't know. I've seen a couple of interesting delivery drone startups coming from youngsters that have got a bit more. Well, they've had intel, haven't they? Because we've had a few years of delivery drones now, and I think we're going to see way more of those before we see all of those. Way more. And the British Army have just got a big contract out for heavy lift for bullets, bandages, and beans again. Parrot, who are they, Louis? I've heard of them.
Yeah,
So how many
they've
sell?
gone quiet, haven't they, with the Vajazzle? We haven't seen much of that thing for a while.
The Parrot Vajazzle, yeah, absolutely.
Gangsters just aren't buying.
Yeah, that
And
remote, that was an abomination. That I'm sorry, but that was an abomination.
Yeah,
I think you get teenage gangsters designing your transmitters.
I've never seen one of those things in the flesh.
Let's be honest. When you actually look at all of the mess DJI created, they really have come out. Probably they're what now, 10 years ahead of everyone else. Still, I think the gap is growing now. I actually think it's really I was holding a new Mavic 3 the other day, and okay, like Autel are making something that looks the same, but it ain't. The second you really start playing with it, you see the holes. In some ways, you could argue Autel are playing a game of make it look like it close enough, and the software pretend to be like it close enough that enough people will buy it. But when
you're still ahead of a lot of
everyone else.
I would argue Autel's still ahead of
Teal and the others. Yes. Yeah, 100%.
Oh, look, we've tempted him in. Shall I let him in? He's got angry now. He's got angry
now.
Come on, guys.
He's got angry.
Nah, come on. Come on. What are you saying about the funky remote? It's like an accordion, so you can play the accordion with it.
It's about all you can do with it.
Nah, come on. The thing, I believe the guys of Parrot are now more on the on the industrials.
It looks like a piece of bathroom wear, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what it looks like? It's one of those massage tools you see.
Hey, steady on.
If you plumbed it in, could you use it as a bidet?
I've got to be honest. That looks like something even the shopping channels would turn down.
I don't know.
I've seen it on QVC.
Yeah. It makes the GoPro Karma look good.
No, you're wrong. It doesn't have a self-ejection battery.
Yes.
It's the new Starship Enterprise. That's what it looks like.
The
Do
new
you use
Enterprise.
that much, Louis? Do you use it?
It's more Blake 7, to be honest.
It's on par with the Mavic. I use them all more or less the same. It flies very well. It flies very well. It's a great flying drone. My only complaint about it is the camera is not as good as it should be. So that's the only complaint I have on it.
How old is
Other
that
than
now?
that, come on, it has features that some of the other drones still don't have till this day.
5G.
The 4G, 5G. You put a SIM card on the drone, as direct encryption of the data on the drone. So if you have someone flying and you can capture the video and the pictures, and they are encrypted, and you can over the air send that to a base station anywhere in the world. So
Even
the
China.
features, even China. If you put the address of the server there, but I believe they all the features technically, the drone is very good. Implementation, yeah.
But it's got a very good SDK, and they encourage
Yeah.
people to help.
Their software. If DJI would have done what they did with the software, open source the ground station, open source even the code that you can run inside the drone, that is fantastic. I think they're the only ones, but they're also on that blue SUAS
Yes.
list. So
They
they have military grade drones, which is not this one.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
the military one did look decent. That did look a much more professional piece of kit, to be fair.
Yeah.
And good old Florida has frozen that blue SUS list at about 2.5 years ago's list. So people are going mild now because a couple of new ones have come on, and you can't have those. You've got to have the old list. So Florida's a real demonstration of how not to do this.
John's
it's-
comment's
it's-
interesting there. John just said DJI,
Yeah.
what did he say? DJI should not be comfortable. Just look at 3D printers with Bamboo Lab. Bamboo is the DJI of 3D printers. In fact, the main people behind Bamboo was some of the main people behind DJI. So
If
there
you've not
is a
seen Ian's got a
very
good video on that. It looks a
clear
very, very
link.
nice piece of kit.
it is.
Is that there behind you? It's behind
is.
you there, isn't it?
Let me move.
Yeah.
It is phenomenal. It is genuinely phenomenal.
I didn't watch the video. Don't you have to have proprietary cartridges for the filament? For that?
No, and
No?
there's a lot of confusion. It has a really nice feature with the genuine filament that it reads what it is off NFC. So you put it in and it loads and it goes, this is Bamboo PLA, here's the right settings, it's white. There you go. But you can use any filament. You just auto, because it's got an AMS which has 4 filaments. So
What
I can
does
have 4
AMS mean? Automatic storage. Because you kept saying that in the video, and I was
I don't
thinking,
know what the
tell
term
me what-
actually
Automatic media select.
It basically, the AMS allows it to select one of 4 filaments. It's a filament switcher, is the simplest term. So it picks which filament you want. You can have different colors or different types. So you can do a multicolor print like this, which allows you to print different colors. And or you could have different filaments. Like, here's a real interesting one. I printed a submarine for my boy today, and there's a great trick where you can print 2 different materials, one for support and one for the main filament, but they won't stick to each other. So rather than the filament, the support materials stick and you have to prise it off and it leaves a bit of a poor finish, you can print the 2 and they basically automatic material selection. There you go. I couldn't think what it was. And they will just separate. But yeah, it is phenomenal. But it is very much the DJI of 3D printers. But that's hardly surprising when Dr. Turbo. So for those who've been around a very, very long time, will remember on RC groups,
He was a very helpful guy in the beginning.
Very helpful guy. Dr. Turbo on RC groups. He is Bamboo Labs. That is who Bamboo Labs is. Dr. Turbo is the man behind it, Teo.
So do you have to activate it online?
Not activate. You
Like,
don't
can you use it
activate.
near gateway?
It's not so much an activation. It does have online functionality, but you can turn it off. Now, there is a little bit of complaints about this. So when you slice a file in the slicer, you send it to the printer via the Bamboo network. It doesn't do it directly on your own network. You can do it via an SD card, Bruce. You can just put it on an SD card and plug it in. You can still do all of that. But what it doesn't do is go from your computer to the printer directly on the network. It goes from your computer.
China gets a copy of everything.
China gets a copy of your STL. However,
this is like those inkjet printers where they just give you the stuff for free and then they make the money out of everything.
but
else.
you can do a local only mode, but you lose some functionality. But I'll be honest, as a tool, it's the first printer I've been happy to walk away from.
Oh, that's saying something for you.
I usually have to run away from mine.
Yeah.
Genuinely, a 3D printer waits for you to walk away and then usually just goes into a complete meltdown.
Pot noodle mode.
Oh, Prusa was the
Pot
king. Yeah, and
noodle
now they know.
mode.
And no company is king forever. But genuinely, yeah, what they're doing is it's very, very good. And it's caused a stir because the 3D printing market is hugely open source, far more than probably any other market that I can think of off the top of my head. And they're all bent right. It will work if it's never. I didn't try that on setup. I can't answer that. I don't know because I didn't try it. What you're not going to be able to do is get any firmware updates if you didn't. And you always, you know what I mean? There's one every couple of weeks at the moment with improvements. Purging, it uses a bit of filament, but with the color switch over. But
No,
that's just
I have a
that's the cost
multicolor
of doing
printer.
business.
I have a multicolor printer, a Chinese one, and the trick is when you're preparing the jobs, have the filament, the infill be created with the switching.
Yeah, and they are a bit over heavy on the purging to ensure no bleed. They are, because they do a purge out the back. It poops. For those who don't know, it literally poops out the back. And you get, where is it? Let me just grab the box. It's behind it because it's done it today.
The only thing different of that Bamboo Labs from the a lot of things different is that
Where is it?
The switching of the filament is done up, and on mine it's done on the printhead. So
yeah, I see what you mean, Louis. Yeah. So it poops this out when it switches, and it poops it out of a little chute at the back. It's little.
Hey, Ian, you're being lazy. You haven't printed the poop chute.
No, I haven't. I'm not wasting filament on a poop chute. I got a cardboard box, Louis.
It's more environmentally.
It is. I'm recycling. No, genuinely.
Also,
though,
when it catches fire, it helps bring on the rest of the.
It does help it go up. I think it's great. We've now got a competitor to it, which is the Creality K1, which I'm trying to get my hands on, which is somewhere in the middle, because they do a cheaper version of this called the P1P, which isn't fully enclosed, doesn't have all of the bells and whistles. And this new Creality is similar, sort of a cross between the two. It's a very good price, but it's Creality. And whilst Creality makes some really nice printers, they're not the most reliable, and they usually need work over time. This thing is like a tank. Genuinely, it is built like an
What
ass.
sort of cost is that?
That's the point. I'm not sure that in Europe, 1,800 euros, including VAT,
it's what
justifies
for in the UK. The printers
justifies the cost.
Yeah.
I'm only going to get a new 3D printer. The one I got 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a Chinese one, cost me 300 or 400 euros. Had lots of hours putting it working together. It works together now. And the next one I'm going to
It's
buy.
a really good one, far away.
Far away.
I just use a hot glue gun with zip ties. That's all
No.
I've got.
There are a lot
$79.
of really good cheap
79.
printers. And actually, there is another review coming because there is another brand new printer in a box which I haven't opened yet, which is a Signedwinder X2, which is, I think, a $300-400 printer, which is one of the best cheap printers you can get today. What that does, I think, that I'd almost argue it isn't necessarily for people who own 3D printers today. That is the washing machine of 3D printers. It is a product that you go buy if you've never used a 3D printer before. It's simple to set up. The software is really nice and easy, and it will just work. And I think that's what Bambu, they've done what DJI did.
It's the Apple of
It's the
3D
Apple.
printing.
It
there.
is. Yeah, it's the Apple, it's the DJI.
And until we have a printer that can print other materials like metal at consumer level price, I'm not going to spend $1 more. I was asking you if you had a coupon, a discount coupon.
I don't. But
So-
and look, this was the interesting thing with
Because
Bambu.
1,800, when I did the math, I was looking
See,
for
and
the
this is
amount of stuff that I print.
Yeah.
When am I going to get my money back? Never.
At that price, you've got to be able to print out a cart and make it worthwhile.
It's gotta, and like it's 40 without the AMS on the top, it's about 1,200. But I'll be honest, 90% of people would be happy with the P1P version, which is a stripped back, same size, same build volume, same speed. You get all the benefits.
Hey, if I go and buy a car, I want leather seats, automatic shift. Come on.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Reality is going to be interesting because they may force the pricing down because it is a similar printer for cheaper, but it's not that. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Printers have finally got turnkey. That I will say, they have finally got out the
Come
box.
on. If you bought,
Well, they've done with that. What DJI did with the quadcopter, which was put it in a nicer form, a nicer shape that the wife's probably happier to have in the house. So if you're going to get it in the house, you're going to have to pay more money, perhaps.
Yeah.
And it looks nicer and it looks sorted. So that's the bit they've done because that is pretty much my huge printer. That is pretty much what an awful lot of printers look like at different sizes. It ain't
No,
pretty.
but Ian did a review of a thing that was also a printer that, in my opinion, was more interesting than the Bambu Labs. The other one that you can switch the heads.
It's a very interesting bit of kit. It is
that needs some work.
The software is junk, and that is what really. And it's not even the software on it. That's the frustration. To get the best from that product, you've got to basically buy Fusion 360 and Lightroom.
I know. Yeah.
And that is the product I love. It genuinely is really good. But their software is just so close to being enough, but it's not there. And the worst thing is, Louis, and this is the worst thing with Snapmaker, and Louis talking about the Snapmaker 2.0. The complaints I made in the video, you'd have seen, if you watched it, I said at the end, this is where the problems are. These people have been complaining about this for over 12 months and nothing's changed. And it's like, and the worst thing,
Johnny, $79, Johnny, $79.
Wow.
And I've used it to scale up one of Sarah's pieces. And I basically got the printer, scaled up the piece. We've made a bronze now that's sort of 30 centimeters tall, 30 centimeters. And all that was done for less than the quote that I got from people to do the scan, just to do the scan. So it's out there, but
there's a couple of comparative reviews of there's several models very similar, and there's one guy's done a review of them all, compared them, and there's some work much better than others at that price point.
There's
it's
a lot of.
pain.
Funny enough, I was looking at one of the sub hundreds to see if it would do one of the, because there's a couple of direct. Is that direct drive? I think it is direct drive, isn't it? It's not Bowden. Is the extruder's got the motor on? I couldn't see.
Yeah,
Because can it do TPU? Is because I was trying to find what the cheap. Yeah. It's direct drive. I was trying to find out what the cheapest, because that would technically do flexibles. What the cheapest printer would do to get TPU, Bruce, for people. Do you know what I mean? What would be the cheapest way to print a GoPro mount? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mind you, mine's got a Bowden thing that prints TPU. You got to use TPU 95, not TPU 80 or whatever. The stiffer TPU, it seems to work fine. It's not as good as a direct drive because you get a bit more stringing. The retraction probably isn't as good.
Yeah,
but,
you got to have huge retraction on because it bloody stretches. But
Yeah.
but look, the crazy thing with 3D printers is if you're willing to do a bit of legwork, you can get some phenomenal printers for $200-300, and I mean big beds, ready to go.
But we and our dear viewers and us, we are the nerdy people that will muck about and think, oh, I can make that work. But the reality of it is, people want a box like Ian, and if it costs €1,800, they'll have the box behind Ian. So we're actually the wrong people to talk about this sort of thing, because we'll find.
I think we're the wrong people. Full stop.
For
Don't
many
qualify
things, yes.
Funny thing is,
That's true.
look,
That's
I
very
am
true.
I'm genuinely very lucky because I've got more printers than I know what to do with, ridiculously. But what I appreciated about that was the fact of I turn it on, send the file, hit the button, and walk away. And actually, there is a lot to be said for that. I'm not sitting there going, right, is the bed level? Is the sheet straight?
Because you've got the LiDAR for bed leveling. You've got a camera for watching the print. You've got a thing for detecting the first layer problems or something, hasn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So it is. So whilst it sounds like a lot of money, I can't remember what a Phantom cost when they first came out compared to when we were all making flame wheels and things like that.
Yeah.
But it was proportionately, it was a huge amount higher.
It was twice the price. It's about the same. It's about the same as this printer. You can get a similar printer with all the features of bed leveling, the first layer, the camera, and all that stuff, and spend about 2/3 of the price of that one. So
so we're seeing exactly the same model. They're DJI people. We're seeing exactly the same thing, and these will be super popular.
It's a direct play out of their book. Yeah.
That's why that SnapMaker that Ian tested was interesting, because if on that printer you could have a multi-head, that would be absolutely killer. Because that laser thing, come on, whoever tried to cut a carbon board, I did. Come on, it's so painful, because then you give up and you try to find someone that can water jet cut the carbon boards that you need. You have to get the drawings, and then the file format on that place is not the same file format that you drew the plate. Oh my God. So with one of those things to prototype small pieces. Yeah.
Genuinely, it's phenomenal.
You can get pretty cheap CNC mills though from China too.
You can, and I had tried. Yeah, there are definitely the interesting thing with the SnapMaker is it's not the best 3D printer, it's not the best CNC mill, and it's not the best laser, but it is all of those things in one. And if you don't have the space or you don't want 3 separate items, then it does fill that gap. Although the software is a problem, and until they fix it, and I need to go back and have a look if they get it fixed. But yeah, it's an interesting. There's a lot of good. The Prusa's are still phenomenal. My Mark III is there. I can see it now. It is. I won't upgrade it to the Mark IV, but it is a phenomenal printer. And again,
he is a 3D printing expert for our field and a designer of frames. So best be careful what we say now.
Yeah. It's we're in an interesting period, and what's quite interesting with the 3D printing industry is they're moving from a heavy open source world And it's a bit different with drones because obviously we had open source, but open source and closed source came up together. So if we look at, DJI have come up at the same time as Autel, same time as Ardra Pilot, Betaflight, iNav, and there's been this sort of coexistence. Actually, if we really think about it, there really hasn't been. There was always these arguments, and the arguments today are Bambu are patenting stuff which is going to stop the open source printer makers, whereas that never happened in drones. You didn't see DJI patent things that prevented open source hardware or software developing.
I think they did do a few patents. I think the difference is they never enforced them.
They never did anything about it. And what you're actually seeing with Bambu is they have patented a lot of stuff on this, and there's now going, oh my god, they've come in out of nowhere, they're patenting all this stuff, they're going to close down open source, it's going to restrict innovation, it's going to stop all of this. There's a difference between patenting and upholding that patent or patent and enforcing it.
And I think you'll find also patent law is very interesting because if you get a patent, you can build that for yourself. The patent doesn't apply. It's commercial use. So if it's open source and it's not commercial use, then it becomes a bit of a grey area. Can you use a patented idea in an open source software? No one's charging anyone for it, and the individual is going to build it. Therefore, patent law may not apply in the same way.
Yeah, and there is, there's a lot of hoo-ha, a lot of distrust of Bambu because of they're entering a very, very open source world, and they want to work with it. The slicer is open source, their software isn't. People don't like the fact, one of the big complaints has been that what I discussed earlier with the NFC, Bruce, they have not opened that protocol. So that is for their own filaments only. And people have said, well, if you're going to do this, why don't you open this up so everyone can use it? But then they can't test every filament. What they're doing is giving you a feature that when you use their filament, it's just going to work. And I do get why you wouldn't want to open that up, because if you open that up, you're then back at the same position you were in before.
But printer manufacturers have to deal with this for ages, and they have the little chips that stop you. But it's been worked around, and most people, given the option, don't buy HP printer cartridges because it's just too expensive.
And this doesn't restrict you, and that's the bit people need to. And people, they might do it in the future. If they restrict you in the future, sell it. Let's look. They're not going to go from unrestricted to restricted for the filament. They're not in the business of selling filament. Look, let's be openly and honest. Printer manufacturers are in the market of selling ink because they're selling printers below the cost of manufacture. The BOM of a standard inkjet printer is more than the 35 quid they're selling. You can get an Epson and a Canon for 35, 40 quid, can't you? You cannot tell me that printer costs 35 or 40 quid to manufacture.
But they've shot themselves in the foot. They've shot themselves in the foot there, because I know I used to buy inkjet cartridges and then the heads would be clogged. If I wanted to do an inkjet print, I go and spend $29 and buy an inkjet printer. When I've finished the job, I throw the printer out and buy a new one next time when I want one.
I've known people, and this is terrible, because obviously I think this is naughty and you should do it, but they should be buying the printers, printing the stuff out, taking it back, saying it's faulty, and getting another printer every time they need to change the cartridge, because you have got that absolutely silly market where the printer is, as he correctly says, it's being subsidized. So if they did that in the 3D printing world, you could say, fair enough, you're charging me for filament because I've got my 3D printer for next to nothing. But while you're paying, those extremely high, what seem to be extremely high prices, fair for what it is, then it's a much.
It's not going to happen. And look, the idea is you put the filament in, it knows the color, it knows the type, it just does it. And you just wonder.
What if their plan is to license the RFID technology to various filament manufacturers so that you can use their filament and it knows what that filament is, and they get a royalty on every roll that's sold? That's how I'd do it if I was in their shoes.
It's interesting because with Bambu, it's interesting what the game will be. Look, I would find it hard to believe the man behind it needs the money. If you know what I mean. This is not a person who I would expect to need he is a very successful individual in his own right. And
then again, a lot of these successful individuals still think they have
like,
need.
yeah, I suppose you could say that for Elon, couldn't you? It's not like Elon gives Teslas away.
No.
But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It's also very interesting to watch the industry, freak out over this. And they are literally, because it is a closed source product. We are used to, my Prusa's over there. If I break any part of that printer, I can buy it or print it. So all of the pieces are either printed or they're a piece of machinery which you can buy, not even from Prusa. Whereas that is different. It's a closed source, but they've released the rods today. The gantry wasn't available. It was actually released, and it's £98 or dollars, which is on par with a set of full rods and bearings for a normal 3D printer. So, it's
a nice box, isn't it?
I will say that you are right. You could put it in the living room, Gary. Genuinely, yeah. If it was in the corner of the living room, people would come in and go, "Oh, what's that?" They wouldn't go, "Oh, what's that?" Do you know what I mean? It would be a talking point, not a distraction point.
I want you to put that in your living room and print some ABS and tell me what your wife says.
Yeah.
It has got a carbon filter, so it should be okay.
but even for some folks, chaps, even managing to get into the garage might be a problem if it looks awful.
Yeah, genuinely, they were one of the most interesting companies I've had a product from to review, because it's a bit complicated, but they reached out through someone I know who started working with them, and it was like, we're going to send you this, here's the terms and conditions, and literally the document said, thank you for agreeing to work with us, we're going to send you the printer, do what you want. You do not have to make a video, you do not have to do anything, you get to keep the product.
He said, do what you want, and he didn't print out a 3D cock and balls and put on.
But genuinely, they were make content, don't make content, do what you want, we won't ask for it back. Now that sort of says a lot about the. I've never had. Yeah. It's interesting. They know the product is good to be in that position, and look. They have reached out to a lot. You're going to see a few reviews within the drone world. That's going to be in this. They're looking for new markets right now. That's to do with Creality. That's to do with. Look, they're on a marketing push. But I know Bardwell had one, and he was talking about it on the live stream, and he was very, I think he's very, very impressed as well. Overall, I think it's a good product. You just try not to sound, it's too positive. You don't need to sound, what can you say? It bloody works. I can't really say more than that. Yeah. I should have just done a 1-minute video. This works.
Well, for school, it's a lot of money, but I mean, it's my analogy would be like, you can buy this sort of robot to teach children with, or you can buy Lego robots. If I turn my back, the buggers destroy these things in seconds. If I turn my back on a Lego robot, they don't destroy them. So even for school, so whilst it might be, and a Lego robot is 5-6 times the cost of this, so it's more expensive. But if it works and it's robust, and it'd be very, very good for schools. So they can send me one for school. Thanks very much.
Send us all one.
It's genuine. It's going to be interesting, and it's going to be an interesting 3 or 4 months, because you've got the Creality out now as well. Like 3D printing and drones are very much hand in hand. They really are. These two industries are. I've been in 3D printing since 2013. I think I bought my first one in 13 or 14, and it is incredible where we've ended up. I used to literally, you'd spend every print, you'd be making sure the bed was level, and then it wouldn't stick, and then you'd be like, oh, and then I try glass beds, and then the nozzle would come down for some reason and blow the glass out, and you went through all of this pain in the early days, and then the printer would crash, or then it would.
So gradually that it becomes in some ways cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, doesn't it? If you put it in and go, it gets rid of all that pain, because then it's how much do you value your time. If you're spending so much time fiddling around.
I remember my first printer, and I bought it. I was probably one of the most excited I've been of a product. Do you know what I mean? For someone who makes stuff, 3D printing was revolutionary, wasn't it? To think you could go in on a piece of software. I need a bracket which is like this shape to hold this thing on. You could draw it, put it in the box, and 3 hours later have it. And that was just phenomenal, wasn't it?
It's interesting because I come from a background of subtractive engineering, where I get a lump of metal or something and I remove the bits I don't want. And going to an additive world is quite different, and it's actually sometimes a lot slower with 3D printing. But it'll be really interesting when we get to the point where you can produce something that's metal with a sintered thing, throw it in the oven or microwave for 10 minutes, and you've got a metal object. Then things really will move.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a bigger build volume, so
slightly.
You know,
the big one's got a bigger build volume. This other one hasn't. So there's two models.
Somebody has commissioned or wishes to commission Sarah to make. It's the official dog breeds of South Africa. There's 192 dogs types to sculpt. And so we're thinking, maybe we need to scan and print and whatever and really cheat this. So big volume for lots of things. Be very useful. I need a meter square, really. That would be good for me, a meter square.
And there's some interesting stuff. You've got these 3D printers being used on building sites now to build properties. They're using the concrete ones. There's a guy who's on an advert who's set up a cup making business he's created his own 3D printer that will print clay. And then he kills that, and they come out amazing. There's all sorts of stuff. Yeah, that cup looks amazing, and he built the printer himself. And you seen there's boats being 3D printed. There's all sorts being done now. There's all sorts being done.
But I'm going to have to go because the power goes off. Because you've joined me for my 2 hours of power this evening. So it's time. I've used it up talking to you guys.
Move to South Africa, everyone. You too could have 2 hours of power a day.
No, it's okay. We're getting 14 hours of power a day. If only I lived in a sunny country. What does it happen in winter in South Africa? Oh, that's right. We don't see a cloud for 3 months.
So wind power's your thing, is it?
Well, there's plenty of wind as well, but 3 months we won't see a cloud. So it's anyway, but that's another thing. If you're in America, see if you can find us as a podcast and tell me, because I've had it out there for 2 weeks and I've no idea. If it's only available in America. So I'd be intrigued if you're an American. You can find this as a podcast on YouTube. That'd be good. Look after yourselves wherever you are in the world. Take care, and we'll see you again next week, 2100 GMT. Cheers all. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.
Bye.
1 click, 2 click. I'm not